I used to believe loyalty was the purest currency a family could exchange. I thought it was the unshakable bond that held us together when everything else fell apart. I believed, naively, that it was immune to greed, untouched by selfishness. But I learned the hard way that in some families, loyalty is the first thing to lose its value when someone smells the faintest whiff of personal gain. I'm Daniel, and for most of my life, I was the reliable one. The safe bet. The man who kept his life in check while everyone else's spun out of control. If you were in my family and you found yourself in a mess, financial, legal, emotional, you called me. Not because I was the most qualified to fix it, but because I would say yes. Always yes. When my father's construction firm in Durban nearly collapsed under a mountain of debt, I drained my entire savings to keep it afloat. When my sister's marriage in Toronto fell apart, I didn't just comfort her over the phone. I bought her flights home, paid her rent for 6 months, and covered the costs of her divorce lawyer. My mother's unexpected medical bills. Paid. My uncle's gambling debt to a friend who wouldn't understand a late payment. Paid. No one ever stopped to ask how I was doing. It was simply assumed I was fine. Stable. Comfortable. They mistook my silence for strength and my giving for abundance. And I let them. By the time I turned 35, I wasn't running on fuel anymore. I was running on fumes. My days blurred together in a haze of emails, meetings, late-night phone calls, and emergency requests that had nothing to do with my own life. I couldn't remember the last time I'd done something purely for myself. So I did something reckless, well, reckless for me. I booked a solo trip. Not a glamorous European city full of sightseeing tours. Not a luxury resort with buffets and infinity pools. I picked a remote fishing village in Portugal, a speck on the map where the Atlantic Ocean crashed violently against the cliffs, and life moved to the rhythm of the tides. When I stepped off the bus, I inhaled deeply and realized I hadn't breathed like that in years. The salty air, the faint aroma of grilled sardines drifting from a dockside cafe, the uneven cobblestone streets winding between whitewashed houses with sky-blue shutters, it was everything I didn't know I needed. My rental villa was small but perfect, stone walls, terracotta roof tiles, perched so close to the cliff's edge that I could fall asleep to the sound of waves smashing the rocks below. I promised myself I would unplug. No emails. No late-night rescue calls. No scrolling through family group chats that had turned into open tabs for people to drop their crises into. For 2 days, I kept that promise. I woke to the sound of gulls. I drank coffee so strong it made my hands tremble. I wandered the market stalls, buying fresh bread and figs. I watched fishermen mend their nets under olive trees older than the streets themselves. Time slowed in the best way possible. On the third night, the sunset set the entire sky on fire, molten gold melting into deep purple over the horizon. I was halfway across the square when I heard it. Daniel. Not just my name in that tone. The tone my family used when they were about to hand me a problem. I froze. And there they were. My parents. My sister. My sister's 2 kids. And my uncle, who I hadn't spoken to in years. Standing in the middle of this tiny Portuguese village as if we had all somehow agreed to meet here for a reunion. Surprise, my mother chirped, her voice just a little too high, her smile just a little too tight. I blinked. What are you doing here? My sister explained that she'd seen my travel photos in a family group chat I'd forgotten even existed. Within days, they had all booked flights. They hadn't told me because they wanted to surprise me. And, of course, they hadn't bothered to arrange their own accommodation. By that night, they had moved into my villa. At first, I told myself to be patient. Maybe this was my chance to finally be part of the family in a way that didn't revolve around bailing them out. Maybe we could share simple moments, coffee at sunrise, walks along the cliffside, meals in cozy restaurants. That fantasy shattered before the next sunrise. My mother woke me up at dawn and sent me into town to fetch fresh pastries, before they sold out. My uncle borrowed money for a fishing tour he swore he'd pay back. My father grumbled that the coffee in Portugal wasn't real coffee, and demanded I find him imported beans at my expense. My sister wrinkled her nose at the villa's bed sheets and insisted we buy silk ones, also on me. The quiet I'd come for was gone, replaced by a relentless cycle of errands, expenses, and subtle guilt trips. By day 5, I was a ghost in my own vacation. I'd paid for dinners, excursions, groceries, even a wine-tasting tour I hadn't wanted to attend. Every moment I'd dreamed of having to myself was swallowed by their constant needs. The breaking point came at a cliffside restaurant I'd been saving for my final night, a place I'd imagined sitting alone, listening to the waves while eating the best seafood in the village. I had barely sat down when my father raised his glass and said, "Daniel's got us covered tonight, so order whatever you want." The table erupted in cheers. When the bill arrived, it was more than my monthly rent back home. My hand trembled as I reached for my card, but something in me snapped. I put the card down, but not to pay. I looked at each of them and said, "No." The word landed like a rock in still water. I'm not your wallet. I'm not your safety net. And I'm done funding people who disappear the moment I need them. They stared at me as if I'd grown another head. My mother blinked rapidly. My uncle leaned back, scoffing. My father muttered something under his breath. But I didn't wait for replies. I stood up, left them at the table, and walked out into the night. The sound of the ocean followed me all the way back to the villa, loud, relentless, alive. That night, I locked the door. I didn't care where they slept. When I flew home, I blocked them all. My phone fell silent, and for the first time in years, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt clean. It felt like mine. I'm sharing this because maybe you've been there, feeling obligated to keep pouring into a cup that never fills. Maybe you've told yourself that love means sacrifice, even when the sacrifice is your sanity. But loyalty without respect is just exploitation wearing a family name. So I'll ask you, if the people you love treated your care like a bank account, how long would you keep making deposits before you finally closed it? If this story hit you somewhere deep, subscribe for more powerful, real stories like this. And drop your city or hometown in the comments. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Because maybe, just maybe, it's time you booked your own one-way ticket to freedom.